Well, I think we all know this month in October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I wear, as many do, the pink ribbon, which helps to signify the fear of being told you have breast cancer, but more importantly, the hope for the future. I am so grateful that I have the honor to introduce our speaker tonight. She is a wonderful colleague of ours, and she has a phenomenal story. The work you all do, as you know, behind every slide is a patient. And so I'd like to introduce Donna Willis, who is the AP manager at Baylor Scott & White in Dallas, and she's going to tell us about her story. So let's please welcome Donna to the stage.
It's on. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is going to be an emotional one for me. But number one, I haven't been giving lectures in 11 years when I first took my job back at being at Baylor. So this is kind of like getting back into the swing of things. So I may walk around a lot. I've been told I have to be in a certain area because they're filming it. That's not easy for me because I'm a walker whenever I talk. So I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable. We've got our desserts underway, and we'll get started with what I'm going to say about my journey. So a little bit of the agenda. I'm going to go over the background, we'll go over our objectives, we'll go over the personal journey, and with that I'm going to talk about the medical testing, the treatment plan, the emotional part of it, the support part of it, and then we're going to do a little bit of look back. So a little of my background. I have been a histotech, and I'm going to age myself, but that's okay because I know a lot of people in the house, and they all know that I'm not a youngster. I have been in histology for 52 years. I trained at Baylor under Frida Carson in 1970. So I started way, way, way back then. Back when, believe it or not, cassettes were just coming out. So that tells you a lot about it. So I have been involved in NSH. This year I stepped back. I needed to actually get more deeper into what's going on at work. So I stepped back, but I was the region director, now Shamika is. With TSH, I've carried about almost every hat that there can be in TSH. I've been the vice president, I've been the treasurer. Thank you, Michelle, for taking over that job. That's a hard job, definitely. I started with being the newsletter editor, and then I did membership chair, which is another hard job. TSH, Texas Society for Histotechnology, it's a strong group. We have a good society, but with that, you have to have members that are really going to be working in the society. So that's what's been going on with that. But actually, I stepped out of the lab for 6 years, and I had a tendency of saying we moved to the dark side. I moved to Milestone. You know, when you go out of the lab into being a vendor, you're thinking, oh no, you're going to the dark side. Well, I went to work for Milestone for 6 years in 2005, and I got a phone call one day from Frida, and she says, Baylor needs a manager. Would you consider going back to Baylor? So I had to think long and hard. And I did one of those. At that time, I was traveling like 90% of my life, waking up sometimes not knowing what city you're in. And those that have to travel for a job, they know that. So I had to do that, sleep in my own bed or considering traveling. And that was in 2011. And I decided to take the job back at Baylor. Well, with that, some things happen, and I have a firm belief in everything happens for a reason. And this is where I may get into a little bit of the emotional side. And you know, I even put it on on the screen to warn you about it ahead of time. And I have my Kleenex up here just in case I do. So, we had the privilege in December. I don't know if most people know that unfortunately we lost Dr. Carson in January of this year. And she died of cancer. But I had the privilege in December of this year of naming our laboratory after her. We had just moved into a new lab, and to get the hospital to let us to name a part of the building without having a huge endowment given also is, like not heard of. But the fact that she had been the manager of that lab from 1956 to 1993, that's a huge thing. So they said, sure, we'll be more than happy. So we actually named the lab, and we got to pick what we wanted to name, and she was at the ceremony. So she got to be there. So this is the last picture that we took of her at the ceremony, and outside of the lab here, we have her picture. So we have the history involved into our lab. She taught me so much, just like she taught everybody else in this room so much, not maybe in person, but from all of her books and all the lectures that she's given for NSH. So she was proud of NSH. It was her baby. So I just had to bring that in there to her. She meant the world to me as my mentor, as my teacher. And she taught a lot of people. It's amazing when you get to actually work under someone like that. It's hard to explain even. So, one of the things we're going to talk about is that I became one of the patients that we serve every day as a laboratory, just like probably a lot of you have too. I know there's probably a number of people. I mean, can you tell me how many people in here have had cancer and are cancer survivors? Okay? It doesn't have to be breast cancer. It can be any kind of cancer. It hits us hard. I mean, we don't anticipate it. We don't know what to say when it happens, but it happens to so many people. I became one of the patients that we actually work to make the diagnosis from every day. And it gives you a new perspective of what you're doing and why you're doing it, why we have to do the best that we can do. We always like to tell anybody, make sure that you wouldn't do anything different than what you would want for your mother. But when you think about it, make sure that you're doing what you would do that you would want for yourself, that you want your lab, that if you were to be in the hospital, at your hospital, or at your wherever you work, would you want them to actually do your tissue? So with me, when I actually got involved with this, I had no doubt that I definitely wanted my lab to be the one to do my samples. And then I have a unique perspective. It's a little bit different, and we'll find out what it is. And I'm going to go over the things that I would say I wish I'd known, because you never know until it happens. So this is my personal journey. So my journey with breast cancer, I'm going to talk about the journey prior to the actual cancer. I had several years. I had my first mammogram done in 1997. And of course it comes back, they say, you've got fibrocystic disease. We're going to watch this. They give you the whole lay down. Don't drink a lot of coffee, stay away from caffeine, those type of things. That's a long time ago. Then in 2010, I started having cysts in my breast. So they actually would drain the cyst and things like that. But you're thinking, it's still benign. We're not having to worry about it, but we'll watch this. We'll keep watching this. In March of 2013, I had a mammogram that said, okay, you need a sonogram. So that's when I come to the point where, okay, you've got to have a more detailed look at what's going on. And so I had a sonogram done, in March of the 28th of 2013, and it came back and said, you need a biopsy. So that scares you a little bit more. You mean, we all know what happens. We all know the steps that has to go through. So then, actually, in April, they did the biopsy. It came back fibroadenoma. So you're thinking, oh, I don't have anything to worry about. All's good, okay? That was not that long ago, if you think about it, 2013. But then you can also say, yes, it was long ago. Well, as a lab manager, we often put our jobs before ourselves. We put our jobs before our family. And I actually learned the hard way. In June of 2014, I lost my husband. I worked late one night, came home, and found him in the kitchen floor. So at that point, I went through my grief process. He was my soulmate. We had been married for 37 years. And my kids were already grown out of the house. And I have to say, I have a histotech for a daughter. So she knows what goes on also as far as in the lab. But I'm the type, I hold my grief inside. My employees, I went back to work really, really quick because I felt like I can't stay at home and just grieve. I have to go back to work. So once again, I didn't think of myself, so I didn't get a mammogram done in 2014, like you're supposed to. I know better. You know you're supposed to have them every year. I didn't take the time. When I get to work, I think about work. I don't think about making that test, making that appointment to get that test done. So I didn't do a mammogram in 2014. Didn't do a mammogram in 2015. My kids made me go to get a cardiologist because they wanted to make sure that I didn't have the same things happen to me that happened to their father. And my kids are in their 40s, so they're not, they're not youngsters. They wanted to make sure mom would be around a lot longer than what dad was. And then I was having knee problems. So in 2015, I started seeing an orthopedist. And of course, he diagnosed my left knee of, I spent way too many years bowling in my younger years. And I had arthritis severely. It was bone on bone. But he said, you'll know when it's time to have a knee replacement. So I found out when it was time, and I actually scheduled to have a knee replacement done. In June of 2017, we met it scheduled. So I was doing all the tests, and if you've ever had any type of, or know of this journey that you have to go through to have any type of replacement like that, they make sure that you've gone to the dentist. I had to get signed off by my cardiologist. I had to get signed off on by so many people that, yes, I could have a knee replacement. And in that sign-off, I had to have a mammogram. Okay? So we did the mammogram. Sonogram. So in September of 2017, the sonogram came back suspicious. Okay? And it was one of those, okay, you need to have a biopsy done. Well, our wonderful insurance companies, you know how you can't just get something done nowadays until you get sign-off and you get an order from your physician to do this, and you have to get an order to do this and an order to do this. Well, they kept having troubles getting the orders transmitted electronically, mind you. And we were talking from a Baylor Scott and White Health primary care physician clinic to a Baylor Scott and White Health breast center getting the orders. The orders, they wouldn't go out. And I was like, do I have to drive out there and get a paper order to get a biopsy done? Well, I'm a firm believer that all things happen for a reason. And at that time, it was so close to NSH. And being a region director, it was when we had NSH in Orlando, and no orders happened before it was time for me to leave for NSH. Now, I can look back now and say I probably wouldn't have gone to NSH if I knew what I was going to have to go through in the next few months. So I get back from NSH, they finally get all the orders right, and we have that biopsy done in September the 29th of 2017. And this is where it comes into the lab, into the portion where once again we can say we have the best capabilities of finding the best doctor. You know who you want to go to whenever you have something wrong. You know who you would go to if you needed a GI study. You know who you would go to if you would needed, well, I knew who to go to if I needed a breast study. And believe it or not, our breast surgeons work very closely with our pathologist. So my pathologist got to be the one to call me and say, Donna, I have some bad news for you. He made that phone call to me to say, you have breast cancer. And it was devastating. I was expecting to hear fibroadenoma again. I wasn't expecting to hear that I had breast cancer. And from the biopsies, he says it's ERPR positive with a high proliferative rate. And that really hit me because I was like, okay, we all know what that means, okay? And so I started the journey with my kids. My kids stood by me side by side with me through the whole journey. They went with me to see the breast surgeon. I'm getting nervous. I'm getting emotional. I need to calm down. Okay, so in October the 10th, I actually had my first meeting with my breast surgeon. My pathologists are the ones that actually said, we need to get her in, and we need to get her in quickly. Normally it takes a month, 2 months to get in to see a breast surgeon because they're so busy. But they pulled the strings for me to get me in quickly. That's one of the joys we have of being in this profession. We have the right connections when we become the patient. I was 65 years old at the time. I'm 70 now. He wanted me to have just a lumpectomy. And I was like, I can't do that. I'm thinking, I'm so close to retirement age. I don't want to have to go through this again if something changes to the other side. Even though one side I didn't have anything on the other side, I didn't want to go through that. So I told him no. And my kids were like, Mom, this is your decision. We're here to support you, but this is your decision. And I looked at him and I said, no, I can't do a lumpectomy. I said, and he was like, I will do reconstructive surgery, but I can't do a lumpectomy. And he kept saying, well, it doesn't feel the same. You won't be the same. And he really tried to talk me out of it. And I said, no. I said, no, we're going to do a double mastectomy. We're not even going to do one. I said, I need to get this part of my life over with so that I can move on. So my date, literally almost to the day of when I had my scheduled time to have my knee replacement, literally became the time that I had my mastectomy. I had my double mastectomy. It was hard. I had to go through all the meetings with the plastic surgeon. I had to find the plastic surgeon. I actually went to two. One of them, the first one I went to that my surgeon had suggested didn't take our insurance. And it's like, okay, so let's find another one. The kids actually went with me to my plastic surgeon, so they followed me along the way, all the way through it. They were my support. I mean, my family values from the very beginning have been strong. My husband and I raised our kids that family comes first. And that's very, very important, especially when you become the only mother they have left because their father is no longer with them. And they didn't want to lose their mother. So at 9 a.m. in the morning, I have to be at the hospital to have my sentinel nodes, to have that portion done. And my surgery was scheduled for noon. I was in the hospital basically for 2 days. But once again, they don't tell you everything. They don't tell you. And these are the things that you just don't know about. And if you don't have the right support group, if you don't have the right doctors giving you all of this information, it's the little things that we think of, but it's the things that after the surgery that you have to go through that women need to understand, okay? It's like I got told I was going to have ports, but nobody told me what a port was. Nobody really explained that you got these 2 bags hanging off of you that have to be drained every single day. I mean, that sounds horrible, and it was horrible. I mean, I literally was almost, what you could say, in shock from having to do all this. I lived alone, but my son and my daughter-in-law live close. I mean, like 3 blocks from where I live. My daughter, her husband lived about 10 minutes from where I live, so I lived close enough so that I could be at home by myself during the day, or if I needed someone, they were there for me at all times. But then it's the things, the first time you have to get into the shower, what do you do with those 2 ports when you get into the shower? When you can't take a shower by yourself, that type of thing. You're used to being so independent, not having to ask somebody else to help you do something as simple as take a shower. Okay? Nobody told me that, what to do with that. No one told me that I needed to sit sleeping up, but you can't lay down. So you have to sleep basically in a rocker. I mean, if you have the support group from, I've learned since then, of the Susan B. Komen groups and stuff like that, they explain all this stuff to you ahead of time. But I didn't have that going into this. So the other thing is the expanders that you get whenever you're going to have plastic surgery. They don't tell you, the surgeon doesn't know what it feels like. If you haven't talked to someone that's gone through this, you wouldn't know what it feels like whatsoever. I mean, there's a lot that goes on with the woman whenever she has breast cancer, things that most people don't ever know about. And then the effects that medication have on you. So I had my surgery the first part of November. I'm always the one at my household that cooks at Thanksgiving, and I cook everything. I mean, literally, the pies, the turkey, everything. So my kids said, we're doing it this year, you're not doing anything, which is good because I couldn't have. The medications they had me on, I did nothing but sleep all the time. They give you a pill for your muscles, and then they give you the pills for the pain, and those 2 together, with my system, all I did was sleep. So Thanksgiving Day, my kids, they were so proud of themselves and what they had done, the fact that they had cooked the turkey and the dressing just like I normally would have done it. And my son got in and helped and the whole bit. Well, we had dinner, lunch, and everybody went home and I went to sleep. Well, that evening, my son and my daughter-in-law came back over and they said, Mom, this isn't going to work. You have got to snap out of this or you're not going to survive. So literally at that time, I knew I had to get off the meds. The meds were what was doing it, and that day I stopped taking taking the meds. And I didn't realize, it had been almost 3 weeks, and I didn't realize what was going on with myself because all I was doing is sleeping. And I wasn't really getting any better. I'd wake up and eat, and I'd go back to sleep, but that's all I wanted to do. I was grieving again in a new way, but it was a new way of that, the grief of loss, that you're not the same. I didn't feel like I was the same person. I didn't feel like a woman anymore. But people don't really understand what women go through when they have breast cancer. So I had to get off my meds totally, and I had to move forward. So looking back, I want to make sure that everyone knows the importance of what we do every single day, the importance of being the lab tech that actually makes that slide so the pathologist can read it, that I can say thank you for what you do, because without you, we wouldn't have someone to help all of the women, or help even, not just breast cancer, but any of the cancers. Because the same journey that I went through with breast cancer, people have to go through when they have lung cancer, or they have to go through when they have colon cancer, and colon cancer often is not found until it's so far gone in the person that they don't survive that much from it. So I want to encourage you and thank you for doing what you do every single day. And I want to say that if you know anyone that is going through this, be there for them, because it is hard on them. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna, for sharing your story. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for what you do every single day. Please enjoy the rest of your evening in this conference, and we just thank you for being here. Thanks.